Hey there, Randy Walker, WorldTennisMagazine.com, and want to talk about today the nicest guys ever in professional tennis. Well, so I did a podcast or I did a video the other day talking about racket smashing and players, how they react to losing big matches, etc. And I referenced James Blake and Todd Martin, and talked about their experiences as major competitive athletes and how upset they were when they lost big Davis Cup matches, and they weren't the nicest guys in the locker room, which I certainly respected right after losing big Davis Cup matches. But I referenced Todd and James as being two of the nicest guys, or perhaps the two nicest guys ever to play professional tennis. And then I thought that I had to amend that statement, because I think the nicest guy to ever play professional tennis, at least from my scope, is Patrick Rafter. And I was reminded of this because I posted a story on WorldTennisMagazine.com where I described my first ever day at the Australian Open in Australia, in Melbourne, back in 2000. I went to the Australian Open in 2000. I completed my career attending Grand Slam. And I was sent to Australia by the USDA. I was working for the USDA at the time. And I was sent for some advanced work for the Sydney Olympics. I remember David Brewer, that was the head of professional tennis at the USDA at the time, said, Randy, you really need to go to Sydney and scout out the place and go to the venue. The Sydney International Tournament was held there at the Olympic Park. And, so David and I spent a couple of days in Sydney. And then, when you're in Australia around that time of year, you go to the Australian Open. So, obviously being at Grand Slams is very important if you work in the tennis industry. So went to the Australian Open for 2 days. Flew from Sydney, arrived in Melbourne. Taxi driver takes me to the Crown Hotel, which is kind of the jewel hotel of the Australian Open, where all the bigwigs stay and so forth. It's got a casino there, and it's right on the Yarra River, and it's walking distance to Melbourne Park and Rod Laver Arena, etc. And I get out of my taxi, and I'm picking up my bags and so forth, and I look at the entrance, and who's coming out of the hotel next to his girlfriend, now wife, and golf bag over his shoulder, but Patrick Rafter. He drops his bag, runs over to me, shakes my hand. Hey, mate, how you doing? Good to see you. Welcome to Australia. And I told him, hey, this is the first time I've ever been to the Australian Open, and Melbourne, and etc. First time I've ever been to Australia and at the Australian Open. Oh, you'll love it, mate, is what he said. Just that was one of the most flattering things that's ever happened to me, for Patrick Rafter to leave his girlfriend behind, drop his golf clubs, and run around, some cars parked in the corner of the Crown Casino or Crown Hotel to say hello to me. Now, how does Patrick Rafter, know me, etc. But let's see, that was 2000. So Patrick had won the U.S. Open in 97 and 98. And I was on the trophy patrol there for the USTA, where we did actually, that was the first time that a U.S. Open champion had done trophy photo shoots off campus, and done media tours in, the city, etc. So I was working with Patrick for both of those trophy shoots and trophy tours and media tours. And, so we were all around New York City. We were in front of the UN. We went to Central Park. We were at Tavern on the Green. And one of the stories I like telling about that day was we were at the Late Show with David Letterman, and we're in the green room and, waiting for his appearance and so forth. And Patrick's all fidgety and nervous and so forth. And I'm like, are you all right? He's like, no, mate, I'm nervous. And I was like, you shouldn't be nervous. You should have been more nervous serving at 6-5 in the fourth set for your first Grand Slam singles title against Greg Ruzetsky the day before. And he goes, oh, no, mate. I knew what I was doing there. I don't know what I'm doing here. So he was, obviously nervous to go on with David Letterman and etc. But Patrick Rafter, he's got to be the toast of as far as nice guys go and the greatest guys. I don't think I saw him since. Maybe I saw him at the U.S. Open. Probably haven't seen him since. So I haven't seen him in 26 years. But anyway, if I do ever run into him again, I'm sure when I put it in context, the media guy from the USTA, trophy tours, etc., he'll be like, oh, yeah, mate, how are you? But in my story on worldtennismagazine.com, so when I was in Australia, I made a journal. I mean, obviously, it's just great to be an Australian who has the opportunity to go to Australia. Not a lot of people, really have that opportunity. And I wanted to kind of just document, my trip, and all the cool sights and scenes and things and so forth. And so I wrote a journal, for, kind of every day that I was in Australia and detailed everything I did and my observations and so forth. There was a Sydney part of the journal, and then there was a Melbourne part of the journal with the Australian Open, specifics on it. And I found it on my computer recently. So, I read it and it was, fascinating. There was a lot of things in there that I had completely forgotten, which is another reason why it's great to journal, years later you forget it. So, I started the Melbourne chapter with that, with the taxi driver. Taxi driver is talking to me about how Melbourne is famous for its trams and its gardens, and me thinking at the time, well, whoop-de-doo, But then when I had a chance to walk around Melbourne and see those cool trams and the beautiful gardens, where I was like, wow, really is great, Melbourne really should be proud of this. So anyway, but go to worldtennismagazine.com, read that journal. It's very interesting, and it's just brings you back to a little bit of that time, like talking to Todd Martin and Marissa Irvin and Karina Morariu and Brian Teacher, the former Australian Open champion, was coaching Marissa Irvin, the young American player at the time, and walking along the Yarra River to the site and bumping into Robert Van Hoff, who was the coach of Lindsay Davenport at the time. And Lindsay went on to win that tournament. So, but talking with Robert about the Australian sun and how much more powerful it is, than the rest of the world. And having the opportunity to sit in Paul Goldstein's box on Rod Laver Arena when he played Leighton Hewitt in the first round in a primetime night match, and all the people that were there in the box with me. And it was great memories and, just a fun read. And, but my tip my hat to Patrick Rafter. He's the nicest guy to ever play professional tennis. And, certainly if you, know him or have interacted with him, you'd certainly agree. But there's a lot of nice guys in tennis too. I mean, it's a beautiful sport. It's full of very, very classy people, and tennis teaches you character and manners. And there aren't too many bad guys in tennis, but let's salute one of the good guys, perhaps the greatest good guy, Patrick Rafter. So anyway, go to worldtennismagazine.com and read that article if you like. And so please subscribe to this channel. And like and share this video if you please. So anyway, Randy Walker, worldtennismagazine.com, over and out.